I'm Janine. I am majoring in Hum Bio and I'm currently a freshman here at Stanford.
Hi, I'm Kiana. I am a co-term right now and I study material science in undergrad. Currently, I'm an EE co-term.
My name is Jenny Balyate. I'm a frosh here and I plan to major in symbolic systems.
Hi, my name is Noelle. I am a senior. My major is Science, Technology, and Society with a minor in Urban Studies.
So my name is Mikey Tupaz and I'm a senior, majoring in International Relations and double minoring in Linguistics and Modern Language.
I'm from Hawaii, specifically in island Kauai. My dad is from Ilocos Norte and he moved to Hawaii when he was a kid. And my mom was a Metro Manila girl.
I am from Layton, Utah, which is a little suburb outside of Salt Lake, 20 minutes north of it. I grew up there my whole life, but my parents both immigrated here from the Philippines. My dad's from Manila, and my mom is from Sorsogon, which is in Bicol.
I'm from Tracy, California, in the Central Valley near Stockton. Both of my parents are from the Philippines. They've immigrated to the United States. My dad is Ilocano, and then my mom comes from the Metro Manila area.
I moved here from the Philippines when I was 8 to San Jose, which is really close to Stanford. In the Philippines, I lived in Rojas City, and my mom is from Rojas City. Tatay is from Cavite City.
My hometown is Tarzana, California. My mom is from Batangas and my dad is from Quezon City.
Ooh, I'm quite the opposite. No, I wish. I am not.
No, I am not a legacy student.
No, I am not.
No, I'm not.
I am not a legacy student.
I went to a public high school in a rural area of my island. The school was around like 1,000 students total. So I had 250 people in my graduating class.
I went to a large public high school. It was a senior high. We had 3 class years and we had 3,000 students.
I went to a public high school. There were about 400 people in my graduating class.
I went to a public high school in San Jose.
So I went to a private Catholic school in LA. It was mostly white, around 60% white.
I would say 99.8% of our school is Filipino. Yeah. A lot of Filipinos. Like all of us are basically related. It's so funny.
Oh, like girl zero. It was me and my sister. We were the 2 Filipinos in that school.
We had an API club, an Asian Pacific Islander club. It was run by Filipino students, mostly.
There were not very many Filipino students though, so there wasn't a Filipino club or anything like that.
I think because I was a Filipino in a school of other Filipinos, it was very homey. It felt like going to school with my family. I'd known these people since I was like a young kid in pre-kindergarten, so there wasn't really much tension. It wasn't much of a competing environment. It was very much collaborative and everyone had their own interests, and so it was pretty chill, I think, looking back.
It was actually so interesting because broadly, my high school was actually like 97% white by population and most of those people were Mormon. Because of that and the kind of culture in the Mormon church about like wanting to leave Utah to go and serve like missions in other countries, I feel like I was really kind of like tokenized, especially as a Filipino and especially as a woman of color. It felt really difficult to make friends because I felt like I was kind of like infiltrating a really well-established community within my high school. So I constantly felt like an outsider. It was kind of hard for me to find friends, but I did end up finding my place eventually. It just took a lot of time and it felt like I was constantly being kind of like perceived for not only being like Filipino or non-white, but also being like non-Mormon.
I think I definitely really wanted to find spaces and other Filipino students in high school. There were just not many besides me and like the friends I already had because there were so few Filipino students that I just like made friends with them and I just knew them. But other than that, there wasn't really like a space for us.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I don't think I was really in touch with my Filipino identity within high school. I mean, there was a Filipino club, but they didn't really do anything. During my time in high school, I was actually a lot more drawn to the Japanese club, where I interacted with most of my Filipino identity was at home or at church.
My high school GPA weighted was 4.3. Unweighted, it was 4.0.
My high school GPA was a 4.0 out of 4.0.
A 4.0 unweighted.
On a 4-point scale, it was 3.9. On the weighted scale, it was 4.2.
A 4.0.
Our school kind of did, but it was funny because if we got into a certain percentile, everyone just got considered as number 1.
But it was kind of like everybody who had a 4.0 was a 1.
I was 5th.
I think I was 40 out of the 450.
I don't think my class did class rankings, no.
I took the SAT and the ACT. So for the ACT, I took it one time and my best score was a 25. And then for my SAT, I took it around 4 times. And my best score was a 1250.
I hella flopped on the ACT for sure. I think I had like a 28 or something like that. I took it the sophomore year. SAT that I actually studied really, really hard for. It was so hard for me to take. I got to 1450.
I took the SAT. I took it once in November of my senior year and got a 1570.
Yeah, I was preparing to take the SAT, but I was during the COVID year, the first one. So all of the SATs were canceled and the ACTs, I couldn't take it.
No, I took neither.
I took 4 total. So in my junior year, I took AP Lang. And then for my senior year, I took 3. So I took AP Psych, and then I took AP English Literature, and then I took AP Bio. All of them I got 4s and higher.
So I did AP Human, I did AP Psych, I did US History, BC Calc, Bio, Chem, Physics, Stats. Oh, I did Lit and Lang too, so 11, I guess, 11 tests. So I passed all of them with 5s, except for Bio, which was a 3. I think on the language ones, the like humanities ones, I did maybe 4s.
I took AP Calc. Out of my 2-year classes, I took English, History, and French. That was French as a second language, so language B. History was History of the Americas, and English, I think it was just literature. And then for my 1-year classes, I took chemistry, philosophy, and math applications and interpretations. Those were the ones I tested in. I also took a class called TOK, which is a 0 period that stands for Theory of Knowledge. I took but didn't test in anthropology because that fell outside my maximum 6 courses.
I took 5, I think. So AP Environmental Science, World History, US History, Lit, and Lang. My lowest score was a 4.
What I remember, I think I took around 8 APs. So I think I got mostly 4s and 5s. I got 1-3 for Calc AP.
Something that stemmed out of chemistry class. So I had to do a science fair project in honors chemistry. And so from there, I was working with this local fish pond. And once the science fair was finished, I continued it, and it became an extracurricular for myself. And so I pursued that research for 2 years, and I was able to make it to like the international level. On
my application, I think the one that was most standout was that I was one of 2 members of the student school board for the school district. And that was like a selected process. Like a teacher had to recommend me to that position. I think in terms of like me personally, I was really involved in HOSA, which is the Future Health Professionals Club, and I was like a VP.
After my freshman year, I applied for a job at our city pool. I became a lifeguard. Every summer I've come back, and last summer was the final summer. I was a pool manager. I gained a lot of soft skills from that work. I learned how to interact with other people. I taught my own swim lessons and had to make my own curriculum, given that we were given a list of skills that we had to teach them, that way they could pass the class and move on to the next level. But we didn't have any hard plans that we had to adhere to. So I spent a lot of time making my own curriculums. It was consistent work. I learned how to handle cash. Working with other people is one of the most important skills that you can learn. It's something that you don't get a lot in school as much as you do in a working context. So the sum of all of those things made lifeguarding a very productive and meaningful extracurricular for me. And I made money.
I think the one that took the most time was my tech theater one. I did a lot of stage management in high school, and I was also able to use that on my college apps because Stanford has a arts portfolio, and you can submit a stage management portfolio with that.
Definitely anything that had to do with Japan. And so I was really active in the Japan club. I was the president. We would make sushi. We would have these little events where we learned calligraphy. And I was also a really avid Japanese learner. And so I would participate in Japanese speech contests. And I actually took also a class for high schoolers at Stanford called the Rice Showers Scholars Program, which is essentially this class for high schoolers to learn about Japanese history for an entire semester. I was very much involved with anything that had to do with Japan, and I had a really close relationship with my teacher, my Japanese teacher.
I was HOSA president. I was also Associated Student Body president. I was involved in Key Club for a little bit of Leo Club. I was involved in cross country. I was involved in tennis, both varsity.
I was in marching band and concert band, like our symphonic band, and then the student leadership, student government.
I was involved in my school's ethics bowl program for 3 years. My sophomore year was the year that we had started the program. I was in my school's mock trial team for 2 years. I was a law intern between my junior and senior year. I worked at an independent law firm in Modesto.
Yeah, I was one of the 5 leaders of NHS I was also in CSF for all 4 years. I think I was also a president of the Sign Language Club and secretary of the Environmental Club.
Yeah, so I was in debate for the first 2 years of high school, and I was involved with music. So I was part of the choir. I was also a part of the orchestra for like a semester, and then I was also, because it was a Catholic school, I was part of Christian leadership.
Winning first place in my science fair my senior year, that being helping me to qualify for the International Science and Engineering Fair. I also got scholarship awards within my high school, and I had an island-wide scholarship given to me through a plantation like legacy company, and awards that I received at my state level science fair from NOAA and other organizations.
Oh, I don't think I listed anything. I think I had the AP merit thing that they give you for like taking an X number of AP exams, and I think that's all that I listed there pretty much. And like maybe NHS, which I feel like was really unserious at my high school.
I had finished this lifeguard instructor program sponsored by the American Red Cross. It certified me to teach lifeguard programs for official American Red Cross lifeguards. I got a top attorney award and a top witness award from my county.
I did not get any, I think.
I got this one award called Holy Cross Man of the Year my senior year, and it was just basically like, I don't know, like how many of my class like thought I was like an exemplar Holy Cross man. It's like a random, like, I don't know. I listed all of my California Scholar Federation, something like that. I kind of forgot what it was called. I also listed my debate awards because I was part of the team that was the champion for the IPPF. Yeah, and then also I listed all of the awards that I got for the Japanese speech contests that I participated in.
I mentioned my identity 2 times in my application total, but a heavy weight on the prompt where it was like, describe your communities and how that can help you contribute to like Stanford and whatnot. And so I think because I live in an island with mostly Filipinos, I felt so connected to my culture, and also being able to go back to the Philippines year after year since I was a child. I just felt like I could connect the analogies of like me learning how to kumot or like eat with my hands from the Philippines from my grandma, and connect it to how like I can be hands-on here at Stanford and the way that I go about the world.
I want to say it was central to my Common App essay. I think that my Filipino identity impacted a lot of the values that I had growing up. So I think I wrote about it in that way when I presented it in my application. So I feel like it was a good chunk of the way that I wrote about it.
Even though I wasn't really engaged with my Filipino identity within the context of high school, I think it was still very much a really important part of my identity, and so it definitely reflected in my application. So for my Common App, I dedicated like a section of my Common App essay just talking about, you know, my relationship with Filipino language and my relationship with Filipino culture, and basically saying that, you know, I want to continue, you know, moving forward, being proud of my identity and working hard to preserve it.
So my Common App essay was about me posting music on SoundCloud. I just like making beats, and I started with lo-fi hip hop, and I started making songs with my friends just for fun, and I would post them on SoundCloud. And I saw that how it could connect with like how music shapes the way that I think about the world, and everything I see is related to music for me in some way. So I connected music to healing, and then I connected healing to medicine. And so when I was a kid, my mom had this health condition, and I actually wanted to be a musician at first. I wanted to be a violinist, a world-class violinist, but then I was like, okay, the music isn't really helping my mom, so I found a love for medicine because it has the same properties of healing that music also has. Yeah.
My Common App essay was about my story in rejecting a leadership position when I was elected to become the 9th grade class president. And this was when I was in junior high, because we were basically asked or forced to buy these $300 wool Letterman jackets to be able to participate in leadership, and that wasn't something that was communicated to us when we did the whole campaign. Initially, I didn't know that I was going to write about that. I will say that I think I had a lot of familial support in terms of getting me to the point where I was writing about it, and the way that I kind of talked about it was that it helped me bridge the ideas of inequity within my own community, and kind of systems that I wanted to be able to talk about or change or affect as like a current high school senior, like going into college. Because my junior high had like a really wide range of classes living within it, like economic classes. We had Title I kids all the way from like kids living in like multi-million dollar like mansions low-key with like pools, private like basketball courts and everything. And so a lot of the leadership that I saw in that school tended to be upper middle class, if not like richer students. And so I think that was like a barrier to entry for leadership. And I tied that into talking about my experiences like being selected to participate in the district school board, and I got to actually advocate for the removal of that policy within like our junior highs and high school, because I got to talk to like all the leaderships within like the student bodies of the high schools that we visited in my district.
I wrote it on my experience being trans in my city. The gist of the essay was that I used to try and write a lot. My freshman, sophomore year, I wanted to write a lot. I always assumed that I had to be the greatest writer in the world and publish very many books. That way I could feel proud of myself. And it was nice because when you write, you don't have to worry about your voice or how other people perceive you. You're just words in an abstract environment. But then I wrote about how my biotechnology teacher, again, she factors into the story because she was the one who inspired me to help out in her little volunteering things. I did work for her writing announcements or participating in skits or interviews. And so I talked about how instead of being a writer, which I struggle to do, I use my voice more often. And how I used to be self-conscious about my voice changed into my voice being a better outlet for me to express my thoughts more naturally, and how that made me connect and feel proud of my trans identity. And that was what my personal statement was about.
And I wrote about the struggle of like getting used to being here, and also specifically like my migration story and trying to like come to terms with losing my family in the Philippines and then finding and creating a new one here.
Yeah, so I have a peculiar hobby. When I was a little kid, I really liked learning and listening and singing national anthems. And so basically my Common App essay was, I picked 3 national anthems that I really, really liked. And then essentially I extracted like a personal lesson that I learned from each national anthem. So I picked Iceland, Japan, and the Philippines. So Iceland was basically about like learning how to sort of appreciate the beauty around you, appreciating beauty in things that, you know, seem mundane or like don't seem beautiful at first. The Japanese national anthem taught me patience because it's a really slow national anthem. So having patience with myself, having patience with the process. And then lastly, the Philippine national anthem, as I mentioned before, was about preserving identity and being proud of it.
Yeah, I started just when I ended junior year. So I had around 2-3 months, around 4 months to really think of my topic. And in coming up with my topic, I love this guy, College Essay Guy on YouTube, and also Lordrick's videos. Thank you so much. No, yeah, it helped me plan out my essay. And originally at first I was like, I want to talk about so many things. I want to talk about music, I want to talk about like my Filipino culture, all of that in one, but it was just way too much. And now that I know like the way I think based on watching College Essay Guys videos, I think in like chunks. And so he helped me like place things together, and also his website has a ton of good examples of Stanford essays. And so I kind of use that as framework to kind of structure my multiple thoughts and string them together to come to like a cohesive essay. Yeah.
Wait, I'm a serial procrastinator, and I think the only reason why I actually like had anything in a Google Doc written down was because I was forced to for the National Merit application. So I remember turning in something really, really terrible. Like I did not feel good at it at all. Early October, and then that was my initial draft. I remember feeling so much strife about writing it because I tend to be a little bit of a perfectionist, and I was like, okay, like whatever I have to write has to be like good the first try. And so once I produced the first like shitty thing that I turned in for the National Merit, I went through like several stages of revision. I think I changed my topic of my Common App after I submitted my National Merit to write about the one that I just said. And after that, I think I was just editing for like probably from like October to December. I ended up not applying to early action schools because I just felt really terrible about my essays at the time. And so that process was really like so difficult. I just want to resonate, like for anybody out there who's applying to schools right now, if it feels really tough and it feels kind of impossible, like you are totally not alone. I totally feel you was definitely there. But the more that you kind of like reach out to like friends, family, loved ones to like help bounce your ideas off of you, like I think that was what helped me get over the initial like perfectionist kind of like ways or like structures that I was imposing on myself. I think I turned in like a different version of that essay for every school that I applied to, just because it was like I would feel uncomfortable with like something on a certain day. And I feel like it was okay for me ultimately. But yeah.
The idea for my essay came from my own experience, but looking at the way other people wrote their essays, first I looked at which prompt that I wanted to answer. So I went on, I think it's called College Vine, and there was a blog post called 21 Stellar Common App Ideas. And I looked at all of those to try and see which prompts most resonated with me based on what essays other people had made from them. I don't remember which prompt I picked, but I remember changing it multiple times, and that's probably why I was confused. I wrote the first draft of my essay, and I made it to a little bit above 650 words. I used two fonts, yellow and purple. I took all of the yellow things out, I kept all of the purple in, and then I added a third color to see the things that I wanted to keep but maybe move around. What happened was that I realized that my essay included a lot of introduction where I could have had more reflection. So over time, I repeated that process, finding all of the words that I didn't need in an essay, and then replacing them with more substantive words. And the main thing that I found was that I wanted to be more vulnerable as I wrote my essay. It is a personal statement, after all. Again, my advice to you is that when you write your essay, be willing to be vulnerable, find the parts that you want to keep, the ones you want to replace, and decide how you can add truly what makes you into that essay, and figure out how to integrate it well with the themes of that prompt.
I kind of just had to do it all in one go. I think I started a few different, maybe one or two different drafts, but I couldn't keep writing it. So then I just like abandoned them because I knew I couldn't write anymore. And then once I got that idea for the personal story I had, I just like wrote it in one go and then just like tweaked it over like a week or so.
For the essay, yeah, it took me about a summer to think about it. At first I was like experimenting with different sort of like ideas. I didn't really have a direction. Like I didn't think about essays until the summer before my senior year. And so it was definitely like a lot of pressure, but I just kind of went with like, what is something that I'm really passionate about? What is something that is interesting about me? And how can I sort of show who I am through that thing? And so it ended up being national anthems.
Music is medicine and medicine is music.
I think for Stanford, I definitely had a theme. And I think that theme was kind of revolving around like the ways that I sought like kind of like justice, I guess, in like a cheesy and corny way to like summarize it in one word. I think that might be it. I tended to write about like how I was perceiving like environmental racism, even in Utah, like living in the Valley of Utah, and how I wanted that to like affect my studies when I was intending to come here to study material science, but that it also included the ways in which I thought about like class and the people around me. And that's what I described kind of like through my Common App. So when I talked about all of the like short essays for Stanford, I think I really tried to centralize it around like themes of like different ways in which I thought about like justice, or like different ways to approach that, or just kind of like constantly think about it in my time in college.
I marketed myself as a storyteller who highly valued authenticity.
I think the theme of my application was sort of just a general curiosity for everything outside of America. And so I think I just was, because I applied as an international relations major, so I really wanted to show that, you know, I have a dedicated interest in the affairs outside of the United States, an interest in the different cultures around the world, and a curiosity to learn and like to learn more about them. And so I think that was just the general theme of my application. Yeah.
Yes, I did. I had an interview on Zoom from someone in Hawaii. It felt like having a conversation with like a friend. And I genuinely had a really good time talking to her. And I felt like because I felt so comfortable with her, I just let my personality show, and it was super fun.
I did have an interview, and I got interviewed in Salt Lake City. I remember feeling super stressed and anxious, and I did a lot of interview prep that I feel like didn't ultimately kind of hurt me, low-key, because the interview, for context, doesn't actually have weight necessarily on your overall application, but I thought that it could have been like a determining factor. Like that's kind of how I treated it. And I got to my interview an hour and a half early. It was just at like a local coffee shop in Salt Lake City. I was like nervous, I was sweating. My dad tried to like calm me down. He brought all my siblings with me for like emotional support. And I remember getting like an avocado toast and I spilled oil all over myself. I don't know what it was doing on there. Had like a bunch of like an oil spill happening in my lap like 5 minutes before I was supposed to meet with my interviewer. And I just remember being like so self-conscious the entire time that I was interviewing that I have no almost recollection of like actually how the interview went. Because I looked up to this guy because he was like a doctor from Stanford. It was really chill ultimately because he kind of was just telling me about what his experience was in undergrad, the kind of things that he did. He told me he was like a German studies undergrad major and then went and did pre-med as well. And for me, I was like, oh, I didn't even know you could like do that. I thought you had to like major in pre-med. But yeah, it was really chill. I did think after that interview though that I had no chance at going to Stanford ever again though, because I was like, oh wow, like he perceived me to be like total klutz, like can't answer anything, kind of stumbling, mumbling. It's because I was like really self-conscious about my thing. I had like a big napkin on my lap the whole time. It was really humbling, a really humbling experience. But he was really nice, my interviewer.
No, I did not.
Yes, I did have an interview. I don't remember much of it, but I think it was definitely nerve-wracking. But I'm glad that I did it because I ended up, getting in because of it. But in the moment, they were just asking me a bunch of questions about like what are my interests? What do I like? What would I be looking forward to if I came to Stanford? General questions like that.
It sounds cliche, but be yourself because no one else can be who you are and you're uniquely you. And just getting rid of the notion that I have to be impressive, especially coming from a school that didn't really offer as much as like the mainland schools and whatnot. Comparing yourself is like, it really brings you down and it slows down the application process. And so just having fun with it and finding out what makes life fun for you, that's what fueled me. And that's kind of what carried me throughout the process.
That like when you approach the essays of your application, to really just embrace the lived experiences that you've had and not to like really pressure yourself over like having completely original thoughts or having to have a completely original essay topic. Because I think ultimately, there's like hundreds of thousands of people are applying to college every single year. These admissions officers have seen it every single cycle, like there's not going to be any singular event that could be completely unique to your lived experience that somebody else probably hasn't also experienced. But what does make it completely unique is like in the ways in which you perceived it, the things that you took away from those events, like how you felt about it, what your emotional reactions were, what kind of judgments you make and how you perceived it. And I think that if you really take and like try to channel those feelings, emotions, and thoughts into it, you come out with something really unique and really like personal to you. And it won't happen until you kind of like let go of that idea of like, oh, like I have to be completely unique in a very objective sense, I think that was kind of the best thing that I could have heard. Because when I thought about my idea for my essay topic, I was like, oh, that's like really lame. Like who's gonna want to hear about a jacket? Like I really shut it down and I didn't even want to write about it until 2 or 3 months into the process. And ultimately, I think like I had something that really was like a really good piece of writing on my end that like really shed light onto how I was perceiving situations as like at a 17-year-old in high school.
When you write an essay, whether it's a University of California personal insight questions, so your PIQs, or it's a Common App essay, or even maybe a shorter 250-word maximum prompt, my friend suggested that the optimal way to structure your essay, he thought in terms of this because he was a computer science major, so he was very analytical and mathematical, was that 20% should be the introduction, setting the background for the story that you're about to tell. 40% should be the exposition, the story that you're telling, the arc that shows how you changed, and then the final 40% should be the reflection, how you changed, why you changed, what that shows about you as a person. And if you follow that structure, not precisely, but if you keep that structure in mind as you write an essay, you'll be able to include all the important parts of your essay that a story should tell.
Everyone always says to just write about what you care about and like what drives you. And I'm gonna repeat that advice. I think definitely like if you are Filipino and going to Stanford, like there's a space for you here. And if it's important to you, you should write about it. And I think that really helps you to like stand out a little bit more as well?
I think the best advice that I got was honestly just, find the most unique aspects of yourself and really let that show through your application. I think trying to find something about yourself that's unique, something that's niche, something that, no one else would really think of, and really let that shine through in your application.
There was this one specific question. It was like, what intellectual idea or framework makes you think a lot? It's like this insightful intellectual question. And it wasn't really much of an idea oh, I love derivatives or something like that. It was more of the way that you can build things up and synthesize things from a lot of seemingly unrelated things. I love Legos. And so I talked about my Legos and how I could build up a bonsai tree. But then you could also change the way the bonsai tree looked with the same tools. And then I use that to share my love for poetry and English literature and writing and all that. And I kind of compared that to how Stanford, it contains the same idea, and that I could take existing things and create something new. And that was super exciting for me.
I think that maybe it was because I chose a really quirky major. I think material science is really random. Nobody knows what that is. And even with a bachelor's in it later, I still don't completely know what it is. So I would say that I think it was maybe it was because I really talked about how much I wanted to be in PASU and how much how involved I wanted to be in the Filipino orgs, in tandem with wanting to break barriers in that way for the Filipino community within material science. I think that might have been my standout thing, because there's only 20 of us a year if we're being really generous. So I think that might have been it.
I would say my essays in particular, I can't point to a specific one that I thought was the deal breaker that got me from just a student to a student that goes to Stanford now. But I would like to say that the style and content of my essays was the thing that made the people that read my application more interested. When I wrote my essays, I tried to use every single bold, italic, not underline, but I tried to use the amount of formatting that it would let me to convey my voice thoroughly. And I tried to write about subjects that were authentic to me. So by being authentic through the form and content of my essays, I think that's what charmed my admissions officers.
Hard to talk about because I still don't know. But I think I'm really proud of my personal statement, because it was the journey I was talking about with my family. But I was also really proud of the theater work I did. I didn't do a lot of extracurriculars besides that theater and the other clubs I was working on, but I think I really poured my passions into that one, and I think it was definitely able to shine through.
I think what definitely got me into Stanford was my Common App essay. I think they were just really interested in the way I, sort of framed the lessons that I've learned in my life through the lens of national anthems, which kind of shows both interpersonal introspection and also a curiosity about the world around you. And so I think that balance sort of intrigued the reviewers, I think.
So I applied to Oregon State, and I applied to University of Puget Sound. I applied to Dartmouth. I applied to UH Manoa.
I think I got into UCLA, UC San Diego, and a bunch of, I think mostly target schools on the East Coast. I think Fordham, and then the University of Utah. I low-key can't remember. I think I applied to 20 or something. I just kind of tried to shoot my shot everywhere.
UCLA, Cal, UC Irvine, Columbia, Yale, Brown, CSU Fullerton, and SDSU.
I applied to UC Davis and UC Santa Cruz. I did not think I would get into UCLA or UC Berkeley. 3 of the CSUs and Santa Clara.
So I applied to Harvard, applied to USC, I applied to UCI, UCSD, and UCLA.
Okay, at first it was also the prestige. I like the color red, but also the opportunities they had in me being pre-med, interested in human biology. They have a program in human biology, and that was very niche. And everything about Stanford is so niche. There are so many ways you can tailor your education. That was super interesting. It's building with Legos. It's so fun to think about. And that's kind of what drew me in at first. And also the people and the way that they perceive themselves as fun. Because when I researched the Ivy League colleges, it felt kind of distant. But at Stanford, it felt fun and inclusive. And so in addition to that, I think because it's closer to home than the Ivy Leagues, where I also was drawn to that as well.
it was my ticket out of Utah. Like, if I'm gonna be so for real, it was my ticket out of Utah. But I do think that Stanford was the place that I knew I was gonna be able to explore the most. At most of the other schools that I chose, I had to commit to a major super early on, and like, as somebody who was like, oh, I'm gonna like study material science, like I was like, I don't know what the hell that is. But I, like at Stanford, I had the opportunity to be able to like move around for the first couple of years and just try a whole bunch of classes that I knew was gonna be really fun for me. I also really was super, super excited to have like a Filipino community. And I kind of was like stalking the Caillou Instagram, Pasu Instagram, most of my like time in high school. So I was like just really excited to have like best friends who were Filipino that I could hang out with. And on top of that, like live super close to. I also really liked that Stanford had like guaranteed housing for all 4 years in undergrad, which was super nice because you're literally within 2 miles of everybody that you know. You can hang out all the time, eat in the dining halls together, have sleepovers whenever you want. Like, it was gonna be fun, I think.
If I had to be entirely honest, I picked Stanford because my grandmother said, and this is the same grandmother that I mentioned in my essays, she said, you need to go to Stanford. That's where all the smart people go. She told me that when I was 8. I kept that in mind. And so the first thing that we did upon realizing that I got accepted into Stanford was that I printed out a copy of my essay about her, and then we folded it next to her urn where she's kept in a mausoleum in Fremont. That way we could show her that I got in and that I was choosing Stanford.
Financial aid. But obviously it's a really amazing school. I've had a lot of opportunities here, and I think Stanford like definitely opens up a lot of doors for you as well. And with the choices that I did have, I think Stanford was the best one.
Not gonna lie, so I actually applied to Stanford as a restrictive early action. And so because I applied like earlier, it was the first school that I heard back from. And not gonna lie, getting into Stanford's like a really big deal. And so I was like, I mean, it's a great school and like, why not just go here? I did hear back from the other colleges later on, and the financial aid wasn't as good. And like, I don't know, Stanford just seemed like the most obvious choice for me.
The grass is greener on the other end. Like, honestly, I don't even remember the college application process, but it's so worth all the work, all the tears, all the stress of locking yourself in your room and getting those essays done. It's so worth it. And I think you'll be where you're supposed to be with the people you're supposed to be with. That's the mantra I've learned. And so that's something I would tell to young Janine.
I think as serious as everything feels right now, every decision that it feels like you're making, like what schools you apply to, what schools you end up choosing to go to, the things that you choose to study, these all feel like hella monumental decisions that you feel like they affect the trajectory of like the next 40 years of your life and like the next career. But like, I think the older that you get, the more like uncertain everything becomes. And I think that can be like both really stressful, but also really freeing to kind of just know that like any choice that you make right now will be a good one. If you're furthering your education, anything that you decide to do will be a good move. Like, try not to stress too much about what will happen once you see those like acceptances or rejections. I think ultimately I am a firm believer that you will end up where you need to be, and for however long you need to be there too. As somebody who's like literally getting ready to drop out of their coterm, like I think I've had my time at Stanford and I'm making my peace with that too. So yeah.
I would tell her that planning things out in meticulous detail isn't necessarily the correct way to do high school or college, or really anything for that matter. It's a skill that I learned eventually over time as I stopped setting expectations of what I should be like in a certain amount of time and started allowing myself to explore new things, unburdened by what I thought I should be like. I started being happier. I learned things that I didn't expect, and I took the time to explore new opportunities that ultimately made me a better person.
I think my high school self was very anxious and I did not believe in myself at all. And still surprises me that I got into Stanford, but I definitely am proud of what work I've done here. And I think I just did a lot in high school that I never gave myself credit for. So I think I would tell myself to like breathe and just remember that even if it doesn't feel like a lot, it is a lot. And I did manage to do all of that.
I think I would tell him, don't worry too much. I think, things have a way of working themselves out. Like, I think I was really anxious when I was in high school and still am today, but I think like, sort of believing in like, your hard work, believing in like, all the things that make you you, and just letting that sort of guide you to, where life takes you. And, I didn't know that I would get into Stanford, but somehow I'm here. And yeah, just don't worry.
Palabok. Period. Palabok is so good. I love it so much. Just so much going on. Like, oh my god, the chicharron, so good.
My favorite Filipino food is bangus sisig.
Right now, it is fried pork belly and munggo, but chicharron bulaklak is a close second.
Ooh, I really love kare-kare. It's a specialty that my lola made a lot, and then my dad, tatay, he cooks it a lot as well in memory of her.
I think my favorite Filipino food is definitely tosilog, tosino sinangag and itlog, yeah.
So I really wanted to be a part of the community here. So I saw the booth and I was like, I'm in. I want to be in. I want to join you guys, please. And I did. And I went to a couple of PASU meetings in the beginning. It was super fun, very inclusive environment, very, very fun. And then I got involved with tinikling. And so I was a part of Breaking Ground, and that was so fun. I danced with like a bunch of upperclassmen. I had not learned tinikling before, but it was so fun. I spent an hour every week trying to do that for like a month or whatnot. As an intern, I was also invited to like their Christmas party that just happened last week. And so, funny story. We saw Dieter Ocampo. We saw Dieter Ocampo, like a 1990s famous actor from the Philippines. And I love it. I want to do more activities with PASU and whatnot, and all the Filipinos.
I was involved with PASU, which is the Filipino American Student Union here, the last 4 years of my undergrad. And I'm now kind of like a general member here in my 5th year. I basically started my freshman year as like an intern in Kababayan, which is the political committee. And I basically became a co-chair of that committee the next following 2 years, my sophomore and junior year. And then I went to co-chair the whole org my senior year with 2 very good friends of mine.
Overwhelmingly incredible. I joined the ASIB program, and so I see a lot of other Filipinos a lot. I'm in Kayu Mangi, which is our Filipino dance club. So I did a tinikling performance at Breaking Ground. I had no experience, but the people that run that club were very skilled at teaching us and designing the dance. That way, people with little experience could succeed. I'm also a PASU intern, and the main reason that I became a PASU intern was because one of the seniors reached out to all of the freshmen that were Filipino that they knew and said, you guys should really consider this. It's a great opportunity. So I really liked how they took the time to find us and ensure that we were involved in that program. It's a very welcoming program, and even if you feel that you lack some aspects of acculturation into Filipino culture, that you can still find a home with the Filipino community at Stanford.
There's not a lot of us, but there are great spaces to find community here. PASU, the Filipino American Student Union, I'm the co-chair, one of the co-chairs for that actually. And it's really a great space for you to find community here at Stanford and just to be involved in ways that like you might not realize that are available. We have a lot of like cultural events, but also we have a community on like learning about political events in the Philippines and ways for you to get involved with Filipino high schoolers. And I think it's a really great and diverse way to just seek out the community and give community back.
So honestly, I think if it weren't for the Filipino community here, I don't know where I would be, because I think the Filipino community here is so like supportive, and because it's a lot smaller than most Filipino organizations at other colleges, you just get to know everyone and everyone knows everyone, and it just feels like you always have a support group. You always have someone to lean on whenever you have like a fixation on like, I don't know, Filipino history, Filipino food, Filipino whatever, like you'll always have someone there to talk about it with. And I think that's been really nice, and you really get to feel like this community.
I think the Filipino community that I've experienced here is mainly through PASU, and because of that, it's a nice reminder to know that I don't have to change myself. Like I sometimes assimilate to like how other people talk, the way that their mannerisms are. I sometimes even forget that I'm like from Hawaii sometimes, and like that I'm Filipino, because I'm around so many people that aren't even Filipino. Just being with them is a constant reminder that I'm here because of who I am inherently, and just knowing that as a driving factor because of like the mere presence of being around like PASU people and my family there, it's just so reassuring. And I think that in itself is so powerful.
I think being Filipino American has been like central to my identity formation as like a whole person the entirety of my undergrad. I didn't know anything about what being Filipino American meant. Like I think the hyphenated American thing was something that was only really presented to me in college. It's been really helpful in order to kind of situationalize myself, especially on this campus. I think that there's a good like mix of everybody here, but being able to learn about your own like culture and understanding also like how it is separate but very related to and adjacent to the mainland culture in the Philippines is something that I feel like I had never reckoned with or like never really understood coming from Utah, because I could always like separate myself as being like I'm Filipino, but to claim the American heritage too was really important for me.
I took a class about belonging. It's called Belonging in a Diverse Society that I would highly recommend for you when you get into Stanford. One of the subjects we talked about is the different representation of different groups in education, like historical literature, even literature itself. It made me think about how Filipinos were represented in our history books. And to say it very quickly, we're not. We're not very represented, and that's something that as I go to college and as I learn more, that's something that I'm more passionate about changing. I'm excited to take more things from the PASU community and eventually, hopefully, teach a class on Filipino labor leaders, maybe in a future year, because the history of Filipino Americans is important to me and it's something underrepresented.
Definitely that being Filipino and being Filipino American and holding those identities with me and remembering like all the ways that my family and the Philippines has struggled to be where they are now, I think that really drives me, and I really want to both represent my family and like the Philippines. Here at Stanford, I always read and like do a lot of my assignments based on the Philippines just to keep myself thinking about it, and also to like introduce a little bit of the Philippines to my classmates and my professors. And that's kind of how I like approach studying here at Stanford, but also like keeping the Philippines in my life.
Yeah, so I definitely think, you know, it's a huge part of my identity. Like, I think it's funny because, you know, some of my friends like kind of joke like Mikey has like two things that make up his personality, being gay and being Filipino. And so I think like, you know, it really showed through my application, and like being at Stanford, you know, sort of like just being in college just opens a huge door of like, you know, things that you can do with your identity. You can dance, you can sing, you can, you know, organize events, you can research, you can learn more about the Philippines. And I think, you know, it's something that I really appreciate about college. And I think, you know, for me, I'm really passionate about Filipino languages in particular, and just being able to have like, you know, conversations with people, hear different opinions about it. It definitely like, you know, reinforces, you know, my identity and my pride in it.
It's never too late to like indulge in the Filipino-ness of things. I mean, you are Filipino at blood, and so it's okay. There are situations in which like you don't have the opportunity to experience like being Filipino, because some people are in schools that don't really have much Filipino people, but it's never too late. You know, you just have to take that action to find where the Filipinos are. They're everywhere, trust. They are there, they're in the nooks and crannies, reaching out, even online. And when you go to college and all that, there will be Filipinos. And so really making the connections with them first is so beneficial, because Filipinos open up right away and you will find your family and you will be exposed to like so many different aspects of the culture. Like for example, for me, I didn't really know how to do tinikling until like I reached out to my friend who knew a friend in PASU, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna do PASU. And so it's just like a chain reaction of who knows who. And if you like know people, then you'll get into deeper and deeper and deeper into the Filipino culture.
I feel like that's totally normal, totally okay. I think, especially depending on like kind of where you are from, like if you're similar to me where you are growing up around like not a ton of people of color, I think it's really difficult to try and find ways to actually really engage with your heritage if you don't have anybody kind of like your age living through and experiencing it with you. I would say like it's totally normal to not really even engage with it until like you're at different eras of your life. For some people it happens even like post-college too, you know? So even if that doesn't happen, then like that's totally okay. But I would say like try and find your people wherever you are. Like even if it's online, in like online communities, there's a ton of like Filipino college student unions that interact with like other ones nationally or globally. And even just like trying to reach out to people online and find out if you really want to learn more, try and engage with your peers. I think like learning about and meeting other kids your age and like talking about your experiences and sharing that with them and trying to like unpack that or break that down is going to be like the easiest gateway into like learning about your heritage and your culture. But there's also tons of readings online too.
It's Filipino American high school students. If you want to learn more about mythology, you can go look online for something called the Aswang Project. It is run by this Filipino family in Canada. The mom is Filipino, the daughter is Filipino, and the husband is a white Canadian. You can learn a lot about different Filipino mythologies there. If you want to learn about Filipino history, look at Larry Itliong, Itliong, and Philip Veracruz. You will learn more about the impact that Filipino Americans have had on our workforce, especially in farm labor. You'll learn what we have done for the broader American working community. The internet is a great resource. So if you want to learn more about Filipinos in the United States, those are definitely the places that I started and the places that I continue to learn from today. So that's where I would start.
I think at first, for me, being Filipino, like when I first came to Stanford, it was definitely about, like showing that I'm Filipino, like sort of like, I guess like externally, like showing that I'm Filipino, like whether it's like, through, I don't know, like wearing very Filipino clothes or like, I don't know, like PCNs and stuff like that, which are obviously really important. But I think, over time, I've sort of, learned that you don't need to sort of like constantly like prove to everyone that you are Filipino. And as long as you know in your heart and you know who you are, you don't need to, try to ask for validation from other people because you are Filipino. That sort of security in your identity is something that you sort of develop throughout college. It just becomes something that it feels a lot more less superficial and is something that's a lot more deep within you.
Balance is so important. I think, with the grind culture of like high school, college applications and all that in your senior year of high school, it's so easy to get caught up in. It's okay to take a break sometimes and you need to let the steam out of the kettle before you explode. I learned here that life and also college life here is a marathon and you don't want to use up all of your energy in the first mile. It's okay to take breaks because you're human.
I did not know about Asian American Studies as a program. I didn't know that it was a major. I didn't know that I'd be interested in it either. I wish I would have taken that class like really, really early on because I think that having an opportunity to kind of like intellectualize or like to make your identity accessible in the form of academia is something that I found really, really valuable, even though I didn't end up pursuing that major or that area of study. And I feel like it was really, really central to my idea or to like my identity formation and like being able to relate as like a Filipino American to other Asian Americans, like, and just understanding like the context of their existence here in the US too is like really important when you're just kind of like going about and like talking to people or like meeting new people as well too. So I think I wish I would have known about that. I wish I would have taken those classes earlier. I also wish I would have been even more unserious with like my first 2 years of academics. I feel like I was taking my like STEM intro classes way too seriously. No offense, but if you're getting beat by Math 51, any form of math, any form of physics, any form of chem, those are not going to be determinants to you being able to succeed in like a STEM field because those classes are made to weed you out. And I promise you there's going to be so many people, and maybe you are one of them, who have taken like these classes in high school. That was not me. And I've retaken it for college credit, which like, that was crazy. But just know that like there's a bunch of different people taking these intro classes. At the end of the day, it's very unserious, promise you. You will be able to do anything. You could work. You can also go to any form of grad school with like any form of grades with those classes, I fear, on those transcripts as somebody who got into a graduate program with those grades on my transcripts.
Make a Google Calendar. Oh my goodness. I was very stubborn about not having a Google Calendar as I entered Stanford, and that made my life much more difficult. I cracked last week and started plotting out all of my events, and I found that, wow, I do many things in 1 week. And when I don't put that on a calendar, you might forget that it's Sunday at 3 p.m. you have an interview that you need to show up for. But I digress. Make a Google Calendar, find ways to map out what you're doing, and don't overcommit. Do not do too many things in the span of 1 quarter because you have 12 quarters to figure it out.
I think I would say definitely look for the Stanford specific like internships and like work opportunities that they offer in the summer. Especially as a freshman, I didn't realize those existed, and I think it's a really great way for you to start getting some experience while still getting paid. And I wish I had like found that out sooner, because I found out in my sophomore year or really late into my freshman year, and then it was too late for me to apply to them. But I found that really helpful in my sophomore year to start thinking about careers that I wanted to do.
There's going to be a lot of people, like I know this is to be expected, but there's going to be so many people that seem a lot smarter than you, that seem to be a lot more accomplished than you, that seem to have everything under control. They have all their together. They're all like, smart and have startups and all of these different things. And you will feel inadequate. You will feel like, do I even belong here? Do I belong at Stanford? But I think I wish I knew that, I have my own strengths. I have things that I'm proud of myself. And there are so many more things that you can accomplish throughout your time here at Stanford. And, don't let what others have accomplished, let you down. Because if you do, then you'll sort of go into that cycle of being like, I am not enough. And then you'll manifest not being able to do a lot. And so I think, stay on your own path, go on your own pace. You're at Stanford for a reason. I wish I knew that coming into Stanford.
Once school actually started and I had to lock in, I would sleep 8 hours a day, sometimes 7.5. That was the lowest I could go. Maybe 6. I think 6 was the least amount of sleep that I got, but I would strive for 8 hours.
Girl, I'm getting a lot of sleep right now. I get 8 to 10 hours because if I don't, I will not function. Other things give, definitely, in order for that to happen, but I prioritize my sleep. It's the number one thing for me right now.
I try to strive for 8 hours a day. I try to, and I mapped it out that way I could sleep from, on average, 12:15 in the morning to 8:15 in the morning, and that could be my 8 hours. So 8 hours a day is definitely the goal. It's also healthy for your body to sleep for at least 8 hours. That being said, the past week and then the week before Thanksgiving, that 8 hours got turned something to about 5 hours a week on average, with my lowest point being 3 hours a couple of Thursdays ago, and my highest point probably being 10 hours after this to recover all the sleep that I've missed on this week. I try to shoot for 8 hours, but as the quarter ends, it becomes 5.
I would say I consistently get 7 hours, or I try to, but sleep is important. So I've started to prioritize that more in my later years. As a freshman though, I was kind of all over the place.
On average, 7 hours of sleep. Yeah, I try to have good sleep. Yeah.
I'm involved with PASU through Kayu Mangi, the Tinikling and Cultural Arts. And I'm also involved in APAMSA, Asian Pacific America Medical Student Association, for the undergrads. I'm involved in carnal-free clinics, and I'm looking forward to doing a spring break in Alaska with alternative spring breaks.
I was involved in PASU, and then I was involved in Okada, which is the Asian American themed dorm, ethnic themed dorm. I was a staff there my senior year. It means I was a resident assistant living amongst the students and doing a lot of programming, cultural related programming there. I did ASB, which is alternative spring breaks, and I did the Filipino issues class actually through that. And I co-taught that with also some of my best friends here at Stanford. It was us teaching a quarter-long class for one unit in the winter quarter, which culminated in a week-long spring break trip around the Bay Area. And we got to meet a bunch of different Filipino organizations here. I was also involved with SUMS, which is the Undergrad Materials Society, and I kind of just hosted really fun socials for them.
On campus, I am involved in Frosh Council. I am Castaño's Frosh Council rep, and I believe that Castaño is the best dorm, but I'm not going to sermonize. I am involved in the Stanford Shakespeare Company. I'm involved in Flying Treehouse, which Flying Treehouse is very niche, so I'm going to take a sentence or two to explain that. We visit one of the nearby elementary schools and teach second and third graders creative writing. Then we take their prompts and create sketches out of them. That way at the end of the quarter, we can perform both for them and for Stanford, and they can see their stories in action and hopefully become more inspired to write. Outside of those 3 activities, I'm in the Leland Stanford Junior University Marching Band. It should be noted that I have very little experience playing instruments, but I picked up a tenor saxophone and I've learned a lot there. I write occasionally for the Stanford Daily's humor section and grind section. The grind is a blend of lifestyle and creative nonfiction, so I do that infrequently, although I try to attend the meetings.
Outside of PASU, I work 2 jobs right now. I work for a class recording thing where I'm one of the student leads for that, so I do a lot of trainings and teach people how to run the cameras. And for my other job, I work for the Sustainable Stanford Communications team, and I write a lot about sustainability news on campus.
Now, I have 2 jobs. So I'm working here at the tech desk. I'm also part of a research lab called the Hoover History Lab, where we get to do our own student-led research, which is really cool. Within the Filipino community here, I'm a PASU co-chair, and I'm also a CAIU advisory board.
Academically, a good 8, but it's the kind of challenging that makes you want to do more. It's addicting. It's like drugs, but not. Socially, it's not hard to make friends, so I would put that at a low 1 in making friends. You'll find your people here.
I feel like it super depends on how hard you make it. I think you can make Stanford be anywhere from a 3 to a 10. I think for me, personally, I feel like I was fighting different demons every single quarter, so I would say it was an 8. But I feel like I did a lot of personal and interpersonal growth throughout Stanford. And that was really, really difficult to get through. But I think that's a lot of the reason why I was an 8. I also had kind of an unfortunate situation with my major that made it probably more difficult than it needed to be. So also an 8.
I would give Stanford perhaps an 8. I think Stanford gives you the pathways for succeeding. But if you're not acculturated with some aspects of Stanford, for instance, if you want to do entrepreneurial or business exploits, and you want to join clubs that are based on entrepreneurial or business exploits, joining that club will be intensely difficult. Because while some clubs, or really all clubs, have the disclaimer of no experience necessary, I would not take that statement at face value. That being said, in the aspect of classes, your classes can be as hard or as easy as you want them to be. Right now, most of my classes are essay-based rather than PSET or problem set-based, so I'm not struggling too much. But Stanford is a place to push your limits. The main limit that I've pushed is my schedule, and so when I say Stanford is an 8, that is because I will remember some days where I had to do a performance, but then I also had to bike in the rain to my next commitment, which was sober monitoring at a Frosh Formal, and I would come home at 2, and that would be a very rough day. When I say that Stanford is hard, I will say that it's rigorous and it pushes your limits, but not difficult or demoralizing.
I think the hard part about Stanford is being confident in what you're doing. I struggled a lot with imposter syndrome and being confident about the things I'm studying. So I would say that was low-key an 8 for me.
I'd say it's about a 7. I think a lot of the difficulty doesn't necessarily come from the classes, or it doesn't really come from the academics itself, but it's just from the pressures around you, the pressures to have an internship, the pressures to have research experience, the pressure to do well. I think that's what really makes it difficult. And also all of the other things that come with college, your emotional and mental well-being, all of those things sort of make Stanford more difficult.
10.5. I love Stanford so much. I don't want to leave. Even now, I'm actually excited to go back home for break, but I love this place a lot so far.
Now that I've just thought about all the Filipinos, I want to say a 10. In terms of academics, girl, she's maybe less than a 5 right now at the moment, but I think when I leave here and I have my Rosie Lands on, I think I would probably say that Stanford was overall a 9 or a 10 out of 10 in terms of a college experience. I think there really was not a whole lot more I could have asked for.
Oh, I'm enjoying Stanford at a 10. I love Stanford, and I can't really encapsulate what it is about Stanford that makes me drawn to it the way that I am. But I think when you attend Stanford, most people of Stanford will have a joyful view of it. You can see a lot of people come back to their alumni weekends and relive their glory days on campus. But Stanford's environment is nothing short of magical, and it does a great job of making you feel that you deserve to be here and that you can use the resources here to become the best version of yourself.
It's been a solid 8.
I'd say about an 8. I think I really enjoyed my Stanford experience. I think it's definitely been really formative in who I've become. And I'm really grateful for all the friendships, all the opportunities that I'm able to have by coming to Stanford. Yeah.
It's the people. The people make it really, really memorable. Like at the end of the day, yes, you finish your finals, but like for example, I went to my friend's dorm and we had home cooked Korean barbecue. And it's like sometimes I forget that it's the people that make life worth living. And you know, at the end of the day, the finals will not hug you and tell you that everything is gonna be okay. The people are.
I would say this is kind of like a double-edged sword. It's kind of the best and the worst thing is that you live so close to everything on campus. Like everything is walkable here. That also means that like, and oftentimes if you're living on like the east side of campus, it can be really hard to like avoid people. Like there's always gonna be an opportunity to hang out and maybe potentially divert from your studies. But also like that also presents a lot of opportunities for learning in other ways that I think. And I feel like it's just really nice to be able to like walk around and experience like some of the seasons. Like it really doesn't get colder than like 50 degrees out here. Somebody from Utah, it's really nice. Yeah, just that you're living in your learning community. So I feel like that's kind of the best thing about Stanford.
The best thing about Stanford that separates it from a lot of ways that other schools conduct themselves is that many of the things that you have never done before, you can do at Stanford with no experience and find a way to grow and succeed there without feeling pressure. With band, I had no experience. With Gayumangi doing tinikling, I had no experience. With doing tech for Stanford Shakespeare, I had very minimal experience. Doing Frosh Council and being in student government, I had no experience. All of these things that I've done at Stanford, I've had very little experience in, but Stanford's openness to finding new talent and encouraging people to push their limits has made me enjoy all of those new things that I'm doing.
I think the best thing about Stanford is that there's so many opportunities for you to explore what you want to do. In a lot of ways, a lot of my internships have come from Stanford because I am interested a lot in like public service and doing that work. And for a lot of public service internships, they don't really pay you a lot. So I was able to explore a lot of my passions in public service, but still like earn enough for the summer and not feel bad about not doing extra side jobs.
It's gonna be so cheesy, but I think the best thing about Stanford is definitely the people. You just get to meet so many like different people with very niche interests, people that, you know, like are passionate about like the nichest of things, and like you'll find people that will have the same fixation as you and you can just like talk about it for hours and hours and hours. I think the conversations that I've had with people here at Stanford are none like anywhere else. And it's definitely something that's really special about Stanford.
I think Stanford exceeded my expectations. Like the balance here is beautiful. Well, I think it's because I chose a quite manageable course load, but I think it's really easy to find your balance here, to find your people, to find like what you're actually interested in. And because of the quarter system, you can choose so many niche classes. Like I'm looking forward to taking a rock climbing class. I've never really done that before. And there are just so many, like because the quarters are 10 weeks, it's so short, but it gives you opportunities to take more classes that you want to take. And you can make your learning fun by balancing your hard P-set classes like chemistry, math, with something fun like a writing course or like an intro sem on like, let's say hand surgery or something. It's very personalized.
I feel like in terms of like academics, I think it certainly was like at par with like how difficult I thought it was going to be. I feel like specifically for my major, I had like kind of weird circumstances surrounding like what teachers were teaching me, and my department was low-key falling apart. So I feel like it was like a little bit not super respectable, to be honest. Sorry, Stanford. But in terms of like the social scene, in terms of like campus living, and in terms of like dining, in terms of like voluntary student orgs and like my extracurriculars, I feel like Stanford really exceeded my expectations in terms of like how student life could look and like how your social situation, your social scene could look. Because I feel like it was just like, there's always something to be doing all of the time. There's always somebody to be seeing, somebody to be eating with, somebody to be hanging out with. I think it exceeded in some cases. I feel like it was at par, maybe a little bit sub in others. But overall, I feel like it was really good. I had a lot of opportunities to do research too, which I feel like were really cool as an undergrad. I feel like it was pretty good.
Much of my expectations of Stanford were based on research that I did, and that doesn't quite capture the subjective feeling of being on campus, waking up, biking, and just attending classes. One expectation that you might want to watch out for that I'm going to warn you about preemptively: bikes get stolen frequently on campus. I had no expectation of seeing many tires strewn around campus without bikes.
I definitely thought it would be just like be studying and like hunkering down every weekend and just doing that. But I've actually found that like a lot of people are willing to like go off campus and like enjoy and like do little weekend trips if they have time. And I think like that's what keeps me going as well. It is just as hard as I had imagined. The quarter system doesn't help with that, but I'm glad that I found the people who would be willing to like enjoy and take a breath off from break.
To be honest, I didn't really know what to expect before coming to Stanford. I applied to Stanford like just because, and not because I had like looked into it or anything like that. And so I didn't have any expectations. But I think like how I've had it so far, or like how I had it for the past like 3 years, I think it's definitely like has been a good experience. Yeah.
Being able to get an A, well, 2 A's on my midterms, that was surprising for me because I was anticipating, you know, of the academically rigorous institution, there will be times where you can feel how academically rigorous this institution is. Like sometimes I shock myself with like, oh, wow, I finished that 12-page paper, or wow, I talked about this hard idea in my writing class that I wouldn't have known otherwise if I didn't come to Stanford. And so because you're in an environment with like a lot of like cracked, insanely smart people, it's really good motivation. Like it's not competitive, but it's really like inspiring and it makes you want to be better. And so because I've been around certain people that are like, I want to do this club, I want to do this club, I was like, okay, why don't I figure out what I'm interested in? And so I kind of got into the clubs that I really wanted to get into. It's just gonna go up from here, I think.
Surviving, like making it through my degree, I think I'm the most proud of that, just because I think there were many points in which I didn't think I was necessarily gonna like stay. There were some times in which I was like, should I really transfer? Like, do I feel too stupid to be here? But in every instance that I ever thought that, there was always somebody behind me, like uplifting me and telling me that I could do it, that I could succeed, that I am doing well, you know? And I think that surviving the like imposter syndrome of this place is something I didn't think I was ever going to overcome, and I honestly maybe didn't super overcome it that well, but I made it through enough that I like got my degree and I can say that I graduated from this school, you know? So I feel like that's the thing that I'm most proud of.
The thing that I'm most proud of coming to Stanford is creating a life that I am happy with. When I say that, it's not the academic details or the extracurricular details, although I'm very proud of some of the things that I've done in both of those aspects. Being able to build just a life for myself independently and interdependently with the people around me, with the friends that I make, that is what I'm proudest of at Stanford, because it is an underrated part of growing up that we don't think about when we're academically inclined.
I think I'm proud in my own transformation. I had a lot of struggles, especially after high school, and just thinking that I wouldn't be fitting in here and that what I am doing isn't enough. But I think I have like found spaces where I feel comfortable and I feel really proud of what I'm doing. And I think like while those anxieties still like attack me every now and then, I'm proud that I'm able to like handle them and think about all the ways I can take what I've learned here at Stanford and like do better for myself and for my community in the future.
My contributions to the Filipino community here, I think, you know, being part of the Filipino dance group, like I think I was able to sort of be able to express like, you know, wanting to connect with my identity, wanting others to connect with their identities more. I was able to like start an a cappella group. I was able to start Simbang Gabi at Memchu. I was able to put on PCNs, all of these different things. And I think I'm really proud of that, yeah.
I think I've grown in knowing when to say no, because I say yes to a lot of things, and so I didn't really have that self-boundary between like what I need to do for myself versus what I need to do like for other things and other people. And so coming here, it's like, okay, now I can compartmentalize when it's time for me to recharge myself and when it's time for me to like push myself past my limit to achieve like greater things, especially when it comes to like friendships and knowing when I should go out and have fun and knowing when I should study. Because in high school I would study a lot and kind of like not really go out as much as I wish I would have back then. During the first few weeks of my freshman year, I was going out quite a bit and I was like, wow, what am I doing with my schoolwork? But I've kind of come to the point where it's like, okay, I can toggle back and forth.
Let's just say if 18-year-old me saw me now in terms of like my academic standing, everything would be on fire. She would be maybe a little bit sad, but also a little relieved that we made it through and graduated. I think I have learned to appreciate a lot of things outside of academics. And I think 18-year-old me would have like had a heart attack had you told her she had like a B on her transcript. I mean, and in some cases, like worse than that, you know, like it's fine. But nowadays, I don't care about that. And I think I've grown a lot to think that my career is not necessarily something that defines me, but that I do want to have as much like influence and control over the people that I do end up like placing within my environment around me. So I think in that regard, I've changed a lot.
I would say that one of the perks of the liberal education is that your mind is expanded in ways that you didn't really think of were possible. I have a 3-unit class about Hamilton and Black Panther and a couple of other stories that ended up with a tangent of me learning about this concept of the afterlife of slavery, me learning about the roots of hip hop, and those are things I never thought I would be able to explore in class. And it helped me learn about the culture that we live in a way that I'd never been exposed to before. In my college class, it's one of my general ed requirements. When we learn about education, we talk about education as the struggle for education in India between British colonizers, and then after the end of British colonization, the way that we decided that we needed higher education to be like in India. Or we learn about the vast majority of literature that we're not exposed to when we come from a Western canon, and even the ways that the Western canon finds fault in how it represents its own material. So you begin to think about things critically in a way that you haven't been in high school, because the education system is so powerful here that you can draw from the knowledge of an entirely different area or an entirely different temporal context, and that can inform how you think about the subtlest things, like listening to My Shot or hearing about education. Anything has a rich history, and college is where you go beyond scratching the surface of what that is.
I would say my growth definitely comes with taking care of myself more. I had really like unhealthy habits in terms of sleep and procrastination and my anxiety as well, but I think I found like a good place where I can do well in my classes, but also feel good with myself mentally and like also take care of my needs going forward.
I think I've become more responsible. I think I've learned, that being responsible is something that's important. Whether it's like taking responsibility for your actions or just being responsible in general, like making sure that you're up to pace with your tasks, making sure that, you have a general idea of what you want to do in the future, but also at the same time, like embracing the unknown, like not knowing what's going to happen next. Because I think at the end of the day, you only go to college once in your life, at least undergrad. I think I've learned that being present in the moment is the most important thing that you can do. Yeah.
You will be where you're supposed to be with the people you're supposed to be with. I think everything happens, like, of course you need to work hard and things, but there's this like force, I don't know how to explain it, but like you will be where your heart desires. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And if you just trust yourself, and if you just trust that your hard work will pay off and you will reap the benefits in the end, the grass is greener on the other side, and you will kind of see that. And You'll see yourself grow if you try new things and if you just trust that your hard work will pay off.
So when I was deciding to drop out of my co-term, I don't know why, I just thought that was gonna be a good idea, to be honest, girl, don't do it. I talked to a very dear friend who was actually one of my pasu ates. And the thing that gave me the most relief in making that decision was her telling me that any of the choices that you make in the next like 3 to 5 years post-grad, or even like in college, are going to be like the most inconsequential decisions that you make in your life. Like anything that you try will be like good information for you to know whether or not you like it, you know? And it's just as good to know whether you don't like something so much as it is to know if you like something. I think that is something that I'm really trying to sit with. I'm trying to really critically think about what I like. And I really encourage anybody out there to take that to heart as well too, that like anything that you do will be a good move. There's no bad choices in this era of like 20 to 25 years old. So keep trying it. Keep trying out and be okay with it if it doesn't like feel good or if it doesn't work out. It's okay to quit. It's not quitting, it's redirection.
This one's gonna start off with a story. In high school, I did not interact with much of the Filipino community at my school or in my general area because most of them were heavily religious. And while I also have a religious background, I was also trans, and the area where I come from is a little bit conservative. So I never interacted that much with my Filipino heritage beyond learning about myths or trying to dig up history. I'm telling you that because where you are right now, I don't know what intersectionality that you have or what life experience you have that might distance you from interacting with the rest of your culture around you. But I'm saying that because you belong. And when you come to Stanford, you will know that you have found a place of belonging in a way that you may not have realized possible at high school. Hell, if you don't go to Stanford and you go to a different college, you'll find a Filipino community of college students that will make you belong to. Because when you're a college student, that rationale does inform everything else. And as a college student, you want, and other people want, everyone to belong. And that is the kind of thing that you carry with you. So as a Filipino student, you belong. However you are, whoever you are, you belong. And when you go to college, you'll find ways to turn that belonging into a deeper pride for who you are and the culture that you belong to, and it will be the greatest experience of your life. So when you go to college, find all of the Filipino communities you can, interact with them no matter what experience you've had in high school or before that, and have a great college experience. If you go to Stanford, my name is Jenny, and you can find me.
Be confident in yourself, and definitely if you want to talk about how important the Philippines is in your family and anything at all about your culture and like what you hold close to you, I would say definitely you should do it, and I think it will help you really stand out to a lot of the college applicant viewers, because just writing about things that you're passionate about will make you seem more genuine and like a real person to them. So good luck, and I wish you well.
Okay, so as a POTSU co-chair, I really encourage you guys to check us out, see if POTSU is for you, because it's supposed to be a place for everyone, and it's a place for people to discover their identities. It's a place for people to just be around other Filipinos. It's a place where, if you ever need a third space while you're at Stanford, you can come to us. And it can be low commitment, it can be high commitment, because, I think just having a community while you're at college is so important. And I think, whether you want to engage with your Filipino identity or not, POTSU is there for you.